Welcome to Swimming with Sepsey, where we break down various life topics, bring on inspirational guests to talk about their lives, their experiences, and encourage you to swim through your own inner thoughts, emotions, and feelings to inspire a change within you that will hopefully lead to an outer change in your own personal reality. I ask that throughout this episode and all future episodes that you come with an open mind, an open heart, and a willingness to look at yourself in a different way and to look at the world in a different way. I'm grateful for each and every one of you that is tuned in this current moment, and I look forward to sharing many more moments with you. And with that, let's dive on in. All right.
Nice.
Hey.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
That was good.
For the first time, that was really good.
All right. Welcome to Swimming with Sepsey. I'm with your host, Joshua Sepsey. We got our co-host to my left this time, Nikki Tamacheski.
Thank you. Love to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming on.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, it's rare to see
Had
you
nothing
here.
else going on. No, I'm playing.
Nothing else doing today?
No,
This is what
no
this is what
I
we do on
request off
Tuesdays?
for this. This is very important to me, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Yeah, we kind of actually the universe just gave us Tuesdays off because when I got my job, that's the only schedule they had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was Tuesdays.
Wow.
They were like,
That's
the
beautiful.
only thing we have is having you off Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I was like,
Perfect.
well, that works because Nikki always has off Tuesdays.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's awesome, bro.
yeah,
I
that's
didn't
the
know
way
that.
she works. And not to leave our friend here, we have a special guest on today. He has become a dear friend of mine. He has become someone that I value very highly. I think of him as like a spiritual cohort of a sense, like some sort of like knight in armor when it comes to spiritual warfare and spirituality and connectivity. My friend Corey Harris coming on here. We actually only met, and this is the great part, we only met like a couple weeks ago.
Right.
3-4 weeks ago, actually.
But I would echo everything that you just said. It feels, and it was wonderful to hear that because that's exactly how I feel about you, that the moment I met you, it was an instant connection, an instant understanding, and also feeling like we were dos amigos, working on a mission together, a soul mission, helping the universe, helping Earth find its universal path.
Yeah. It was cool because you literally I sat down and we did like a little head nod at first. And then we looked back at each other and you go, do I know you? It's like, I don't know. Do I know you? You look also very familiar. And that was one of the big things too. When you have meets like that, I think that, for anybody, I'm sure there's tons of people that have friends like that, but I think the connection of where it was, hey, you seem like somebody I've known for a very long time. Not where people are like, oh, I just had this connection. We hit it off right away, friends, best friends
Right.
have that, right? But you get to a point where it's so I want to use the word daunting, right? But not in the dark term that it is,
Sure.
daunting of it was just so a bell rang,
Yep.
a big gong,
Right.
It was kind of oh, okay, this is somebody that we have to kind of almost like refresh ourselves with each other in this kind of physical space, which is cool.
A bell followed by a magnet, where
Yeah.
I was wherever you were. I was aware of where you were in a room and wanted to connect with you and chat with you. And then once we started talking, realized that we had a lot in common and in spaces that not everybody is necessarily thinking about. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what we were both reading. This is whether it was a past life or this life, just reading common energy that we were on that same path together.
Yeah. It was that double frequency that got expounded into just like, right? When two frequencies of the same energy meet, it just explodes.
Right.
Like, get into sound and things like that. But honestly, like I want to hear like a little about you, like who Corey is, like what did you like before we met? Like what were you doing? Like,
Sure.
give me that.
I've had a very interesting life journey. No one would say this is boring. Let me see if I can just do the summary. I've always wanted to know ways of thinking and cultures that were different from mine, and that would express itself in not just studying, but diving into how to immerse myself. The easiest example is joining the military way back in 1998. And going, because it wasn't anything. You've
Yeah.
talked to me, that doesn't. And all my friends would say the same thing, did say the same thing. You did what now? Hippie Corey from Flagstaff NAU in Birkenstocks with long hair. You're going to cut your hair and join the military? Okay. And a big part of it was I want to understand this. I don't get this. I don't get this type of thinking, this type of this way of viewing the world. And I want to be a part of that. I want to, defend my community. And it was the National Guard. So back then, we weren't going to war. It was a fire here or whatever else.
Yeah.
And then, 2 deployments later, kind of got tired of that and ready to move on. And I always love to look at what's the biggest challenge for humanity, right? That I can put my abilities to. And for that, it was seeing veterans that had a hard time coming home and readjusting. I had that same hard time.
Yeah.
So I worked, my first real job working with veterans was working for a congressman, doing veterans outreach, followed by working at a homeless veterans center, doing
that's beautiful.
outreach. And and good example, because this kind of fits with the whole how I live my life. When I worked for that congressman, I was brand new to the veteran community, which is separate from the military community. And nobody knew me. I said, I want to get to know this problem. I want from the core. So I said, I want to, what's the biggest problem we have now? Homelessness. Mm-hmm. And I want to understand it in a way that is true. And coming in as a congressman's aide, I would not get that. So I talked to the person who was in charge of that veterans transitional living center and said, I want to walk in as if I was a homeless vet and see how they treat me. And he said, sure. So I did. And it was fascinating to see it from that perspective.
What was that like? Like, how were you treated, if you don't mind?
Wonderful,
asking?
honestly.
Okay.
But also part of that is because I was a veteran, I was treated well. I mean, everybody should be treated well. But I think that especially at that time, there was a lot of effort towards that because a lot of the people coming home were having that same challenge. And, especially in America, I think we have this narrative about being homeless that if you are homeless, it's your fault. But unless you're a veteran, and then it's, you fought, so it's okay. Well, we'll help you, but maybe not these other people.
Yeah.
Which was hard to...
It's a sad narrative that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from there, I worked on multiple campaigns, worked for another congressman. I worked in the veteran community on different initiatives. But then the big transition for me came when I saw Donald Trump win the presidency, and I'm not here to pick sides or anything. Obviously, my side is the other side. But what it represented was the problem, that it represented a split in a way that we hadn't seen in America. That basically we've got two separate stories, and there is no common language anymore.
Yeah.
It's you're evil, so everything I can do against you is justified, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. That there's no more, well, maybe we can work together on this, or or the middle is so small now.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that there is no middle.
That's
They're
that's a fair
the
point.
same coin, in my opinion.
I think that there's degrees, that there's and people that like myself, like I love understanding those other cultures. That's the middle. It's not necessarily that I have necessarily a center viewpoint, but I understand that other viewpoint has validity, even though this is my lens.
Yeah,
The secret
Yeah.
sauce of humanity is in the middle,
everything,
where
yeah.
everything like balances out.
Yeah.
That's our our sweet spot.
Yeah.
And in America, it seems we've lost that. we can't see that sweet spot anymore.
Prided ourselves on being a melting pot and can't melt the pot.
Right. Oh yeah. The pot's burning down.
Yeah. We just keep adding water and hoping that, okay.
Right.
Or
Or
we
alcohol.
simmered to our last,
Just
or
keep
alcohol.
throwing the alcohol in that fire. It'll go out. Just throw some more. It'll work out.
It's disappearing so fast. I don't know what to do.
Right.
Say, well, we're not boiling it down well enough. We're not
Right.
integrating all the ingredients. We're not giving ourselves time to process really what's going. We're just trying to move one after another, after another, after another, and it's becoming this. I mean, you see it in our own mental state, right?
Right.
This macro is literally just our same internal mental process of I'm going from one thing to the next, trying to just keep it going,
Yes.
keep it surviving, and then you're never giving the time to be like, wait a second, what just happened the last 10, 15 years of my
Right.
life? Where did that go?
And-
Some people are like, oh, I blinked and I was 40 years into my career.
Right.
I'm like, what?
Exactly. and I think you hit on the next transition for me, that on a personal note, I was not taking care of myself. I
Yeah.
was helping other people take care of themselves, but I was working 60 to 80 hour week jobs, and going, well, I just got to do this. This is what I'm doing to help everybody else, not realizing that I was part of the problem.
Yeah.
That when we're doing that to ourselves, we are creating the space for that extremism, for that negativity, for that lack of care for
Yeah.
ourselves, and that has to express with other people you're around. So while I continued to work in politics after that, that's where I came up with the idea for creating an augmented reality experience where people could play a game together, conservatives and liberals, where they have a common goal to work together to fight a big bad in story terms, and rewrite that American story in a way that they're interacting with their community, that they're finding puzzle pieces to this game in a museum or in a library, or finding a monument and going, I have to research the history of this, or a mural, understanding what the artist was saying,
Yeah.
and that's the puzzle piece that they have to figure out with conservative and liberal viewpoints.
Would it be like when you're talking about like leaving the puzzle pieces, is that like physical puzzle pieces or like throughout the game?
Yeah,
puzzle
well,
pieces?
Yes and no. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's augmented reality, so I'm taking like what is already there. Like for example, there's an upside down pyramid that's on Central Avenue.
Yeah.
And when you walk up to it, it looks cool. It looks really interesting. But I'm using it to say it's like one of those Rubik's pyramids, so that as you're looking at it, it all of a sudden becomes animated, and you're able to like lift it out and play with it, so that you're
Wow.
figuring out a puzzle, and once it comes back down, it's like, oh, energy channel, boom,
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
And,
Okay,
that's
cool.
to teach people an algorithm, like because if we're talking about AI, that would be its first language, is a puzzle algorithm to create itself.
Yeah. That stuff trips me out a little bit. So
fair.
what like put you on the? Well, I gotta ask you this: like, what put you on the journey to? I know you said you wanted to create the game to kind of have them like work. It was like a work together kind of deal, which I like, because I think the only way that we're gonna get anywhere is if we work together. Like this unity aspect has to be a freaking thing. If we
Right.
don't have unity, we literally don't have anything, and it becomes a scenario for just absolute chaos, which I feel like, and I could be completely wrong on this because I don't know. I don't deal with politics very much, but it feels like, thank you. It feels like that is like in, I don't want to say like a baseline, but like a subconscious point of capitalism. when it becomes like an individual, you're growing your one thing, you're growing your business, right? And you're like trying to push to grow.
Right.
But you do that, and they do that. So many people do that to a point of not caring what's happening to the people around them because they only are head focused, like horse on a blinders, right? I'm in a horse race, and I'm fucking going, and I see nothing. No one else around me matters. And I'm just going.
Right.
That is what that feels like to me. I could be completely wrong.
No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, and the flip side of, I mean, there's still value to,
I agree,
an individual viewpoint that says, you know, I'm not going to follow whatever anyone tells me. I need
Right.
to, you know, evaluate myself, what I'm going to choose to be a part of. But I would, to your point, I think in America, our capitalistic viewpoint is a kind of a root of why our politics has become more and more toxic, because it's about me versus you. That the story of exclusion and opposition is easier in that mindset. It's easier to hate someone on the other side if you're looking at, you know, I get this money or this at the cost of that other
if
person.
you're looking at numbers,
Right.
that's all you start to look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though we've got these great models for a commune, like a family, where it's, you know, 2 to 5 people or whatever that all are living in the same, you know, amount of money and same amount of food and sharing, and some are bringing in money, some are just there to receive, and yet it's all a community. You know,
Yeah.
this is an organism that operates as a, you know, to different degrees, you know, a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. I firmly believe that we're making our way towards, like, back towards community spaces. I think that's like, and we're going to have to, like, it's going to be like separate. Like, we're going to eventually move into, and you see it already, the mindset of people like shifting into small property, small places of land, and, you know, going outsourcing, going out into those places. Right now they're doing it individually, but as far as like the really push for like community, like I would love that.
Right.
You know? And I want to stress this point because I feel like a lot of people get on this point, like just because we're doing that doesn't mean technology goes away.
Right. Right.
I think that's one thing that some people fear is like, well, if we were to do that, technology and infrastructure is gone. What are we going to go back to the Stone Ages, right? We're going to just completely forget about everything, you know, and just go back and reset. It's like, well, no, I don't believe that's going to happen if we play our cards right. I'll say that.
Okay.
Because we are at a crossroads.
Fair.
If we play our cards right, if we can bring in this empathy aspect, and we bring into like what you're saying, this middle of like understanding, because I think that's really the line, right? Is understanding and acceptance when it comes to having two sides, right? And we all have two sides. We all have what you would call a good and a bad. And so by understanding that lives within everybody, you can understand that you're human, you're learning, you're at this point in your life and you're needing to grow, and I can help you because I went through that, so let me help you.
Right.
Instead of, screw you. Like, I'm going to let you fall to the wayside. You're lacking, you're behind. This is all up to you. Good luck. Right? I feel like that's the message that so many people get when it comes to like everything, mental health, you know, trying to grow a business, depending on the community you're around, right? If you have the right people, but on a larger scale, yeah.
It's interesting what you said about the technology piece before, because there's an interesting strain in politics that's emerged over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, where think of it like a circle, right? Where the middle of American politics is at the top of the circle, and on the left and right are the left and right. But there's a space at the very bottom where the extremes have started to merge. It's like a libertarian, liberal, I call it a libertarian kind of viewpoint, which is anti-technology, anti-government, like they're like, yeah, we just want to go live in the desert, and, you know, very, you know, to a degree, me focused. And I would add to that the number of people that I hear that say, civil war is coming. And I want to be very clear when I say this. I'm not saying that is what's coming, but I will say, as someone who has studied this in other cultures, that there are a lot of those factors that we are, that are like, I can point to and go, that's an indicator. Oh, and that's married to that's an indicator, and that's an indicator. One of the big ones is hearing it from veterans. Veterans who have seen what civil war looks like, or a war-torn country that should be, ideally, the voices of reason going, oh, you think it's going to be better to have a civil war? Let me tell you why that's not going to work out for you. But a lot of them are saying, nope, I think this is coming. Not necessarily saying, I'm going to make it happen or I'm going to be a part of it. And the problem with that, the more people that say it, the more likely it becomes that it's going to happen, whether it was right or not.
Part of the co-creation thing.
Right. You're creating that space just by saying this is something that can happen. And maybe that's the way, that's where we're headed. I hope not. And that's honestly a big part of what I'm trying to work against, is how to create evolution instead of revolution. That we're in that space right now where the conditions are ripe for both. Do we evolve or do we reset, going, nope, we're not ready?
That's revolution.
Right, exactly.
You're just resetting.
Right.
Yeah. Which is, and it's funny because when we did that question for Questions for Humanity, we were like...
like what would it look like if you were...
No, the history one.
Oh, yeah, how does history keep repeating itself?
Yeah, we don't learn from it.
Yeah.
We don't.
Right.
I've recognized that, and I think it's okay. They want me to rephrase that. It's not that we don't learn from it. It's that we don't see it in a spiral like how it is in a growth. We see it as, oh, great, we're here again. Well, this is going to happen, right? And just like accept that this is where we're going to get to, instead of seeing, hold the phone. Well, no. Okay, so back then we didn't really have ways of talking very well. Like, messages were construed. Everything was written on paper. You could easily construe a message when you're going from one state to the next or one country to the next. Like, there's no way. Like, now things are instantaneous and things are embedded into files. So it could be like, well, so as far as like communication's gone, that's expounded greatly.
Right.
So having the ability to do that, I don't believe that, like to your point when you're saying, I hope that doesn't happen, because of how we were able to communicate. I don't believe that's on the table, because they're gonna be like, well, this is all BS. None of us in the actual community feel this way. This is just being exploded by whatever powers that be and wanting us to believe that, which is why so many people are turning away from regular TV. Is like, well, I don't want that. I mean, I love the people I work with. I love the people I communicate with and in a community with, but I also feel like it targets those that don't have community, and I think that's like one of the most important things. Like when you're, they did the episode on blue zones on Netflix. I can't remember what it was. It was like blue zones are basically like where you live over 100 years or so. And you become like a centaurians. And so this guy did like this 20-year study and go into all these different various blue zones across the world and seeing like, what are you guys doing that is helping you live this long while still being so active?
Interesting.
And community and being with the people around you and like engaging, that was one of them. That was like one of the biggest ones, was like the connectivity aspect. And so I feel like with the way things have been drawn up in our country, and I wouldn't say most of the world, but what's seemingly tried to starting to happen, or is like this like separation away from community. I mean, they locked us all down for like 2 years. What do you think that was about? Okay, you guys are getting really close knit again, but all that really did, if you can see it and you go out into spaces where people are actually gathering and things like that, all it did was reinforce that. If you go down to the people that are like the actual people, instead of listening to what's going on outside, like I know tons of people that are doing like tons of different community events, whether they're just randomly throwing on events or things at their house or in their neighborhood, or they're doing, connecting with local businesses and doing stuff like Lacuna, beautiful place.
Right.
Our Self-Friendly is doing something over there. Like, that's awesome. But there's tons of different communities like that. And I think that's something that's not spoken about enough, that these are all going on. And if you're in that space to engage, then engage. These are all accepting places where you can be yourself and allow yourself to grow. And I would encourage, and I would guess, I could be totally wrong, that there's, Phoenix isn't the only place that's doing that. I think you just got to look.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think.
I was just going to say, I think that to this Civil War point, I mean, that, for one, that scares the hell out of me. Because, I guess if it has to happen, it has to happen.
Right. But let's try option one first.
But, I was going to say, I've always heard that there's multiple. I always heard that there's another way. And so that's, been my push. I don't know if anyone, for those that have listened and those that have come on and, those that know me, I always try to not push you in that way, but, steer you into thinking, well, going back to your concept of the more that you talk about it, the more that it's going to create and happen, and
right.
do it all over again, right? So okay, if we know that's the case, we know that's an actual universal law, then why don't we take that universal law, apply what we just learned from our past, and go, okay, well, let's talk about something different. And as we're talking about that and thinking about that, our brains and our ways of working together will create solutions. But we're so problem focused that on past problems that don't necessarily matter or we need to let go of. Right.
I think part of the challenge we have right now, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the stories, that everything you're saying is true, but it's not true for everyone.
Yeah.
That they are, that what COVID did for a lot of us was to evolve the way that we community, but also allowed us to separate more, to that different interest groups were able to pull further apart, and added to that sense of othering of those groups. I like to think of it if you want to think of it the way that conservatives and liberals work, as one of the main thrusts of our way of perceiving the world, especially in America. It's think of conservatives as a protective father, and liberals as a compassionate mother. And normally, at their best, they're working together to protect and to love and to have compassion for. At their worst, which is kind of what we're seeing now, imagine there's a rubber band between those two. They're pulling further and further apart. Think of identity politics, as we talk about pronouns and everything else that are, for this generation, the youngest generation, mind-altering and freeing, and whereas the older generation is terrified because they can't even edit the way that they're talking about it, because it's harder to change your language. So it's a competition of the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, and there is nothing more dangerous than that being separate, because your story of yourself, and this is part of the problem in politics, is so much of it is getting at the story of yourself that you tell yourself about who you are and why you parent and why you exist the way that you exist. This is why people fight for those things so, vociferously over those things that they care about so much.
Right.
And because that rubber band is now stretching to the point where I think, where little pieces are kind of breaking, that's, hopefully it'll pull back together, and that's what that rubber band is for, that we are an organism that is tied together, so that we can't have just one group of, open-minded, our buddies at Burning Man going, all right, screw all you guys, we're just going to do our own thing.
Yeah.
We're going to take California, you guys take the rest.
Yeah.
Because we're tied to each other. That's what that rubber band is. But it is breakable.
Yeah. What do you think happens if it breaks?
Well, I think we saw some of that when Trump lost the election. That insurrection that he was stoking. Those are the kinds of things that someone like a Trump, liberal or conservative, would take advantage of.
Yeah.
That those types of, that it isn't hard to see, if you're a student of human nature, that those ingredients are there to make a volatile pot of soup, if you want to. And he did. And that happened. So it's not, and he wasn't good at it, thankfully.
Yeah.
But he's he has learned lessons, and so have other politicians around what he did then. Yeah.
Politics makes me feel grimy.
Yep, I understand.
And it's weird. It shouldn't.
It should be elevated. It should
Yeah.
be wonderful.
It should be a place where it's like, oh, I feel okay enough to talk about these things.
I believe that this is, and this is kind of why I used AI in my game, that this is a place where AI can really help us. Looking at things like metrics for how we debate, for how we lie, for how we manipulate, and showing us what we're doing in a way that is self-reported, so it would help you figure out how not to sound like Hitler, or how not to, or how not to sound like Bill Clinton, when you're lying your butt off.
I would say that if that's the case, we're towing the line. And I think that there was a question that sparked as far as basically sounds like we're using AI as a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part is that if you have to teach it for it to then teach you, what are you missing that you're not learning, that you have to rely on some source that you created to show you a way of being?
I think you just said it. We didn't have mirrors until we had mirrors.
Yeah.
We had to make mirrors to be able to have a mirror. And
But even a mirror is not even the true authentic self.
Sure. It's
Yeah.
just a It's a reflection. Exactly. It's light reflected, off of
Yeah.
us in a way that we can go, oh, that's what I look like.
Yeah.
Same thing with an AI, that yes, it needs to be trained so that it can, because it has the ability to, in a way that we can't, look at the meta, look at the overarching trends, that we are beautifully in these individual bodies, these little meat packages
Yeah.
that are designed to interact with the people around us, play games, and love and connect and disengage, so that we have to learn in our little space. But an AI, both wonderfully and terrifyingly, has the ability to look above that and to look at the group space and say, what are we doing and how can we, and then, even better, project forward with some sort of a simulation to say, if this trend continues, what happens? Or if we add in a new ingredient, how can we edit that trend and reflect it back to us, ideally giving it to us in a way that is consent-based, so that we get to choose what we want to do with that information.
Okay, that makes more sense. Well, that feels a little bit nicer, because
Yeah, not as dangerous.
all I'm hearing when you're going through that, I'm like, well, that's the Akashic records, right? That's so when you're talking about feeding this thing and letting it learn, I'm like, that's technically the Akashic records.
Yes.
Right? In a sort of technological form.
Well,
Right? You're trying to bring this era of data and consciousness into ones and zeros.
Yes.
Okay, I'm understanding. I knew AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way that you're wanting to kind of bring it about, I don't even know how you even code that. That to me is interesting.
Well, going with the premise that we are living in some kind of benevolent simulation,
Right.
where there is a program to the universe,
Right.
and that program would have to have a programmer and use data to program that. I mean, I talked to a lot of my friends about this who are in more, what do you call it, self-help communities and spiritual communities, and they recoil when I talk about AI as spiritual. And I think a lot of that is only because we didn't have the language of computers 1,000 years ago when we first started
Right.
talking about the Akashic record. Or I don't know when that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
enough about
it
to
was
say.
it was way before. It was mentioned
Yeah.
in the Bible.
Right. They couldn't say,
before
oh,
that.
and by the way, there are going to be computers and they're going to use
Yeah,
data
yeah,
and there's
yeah.
going to be electricity and all that will make this big library so that you can then, but they had libraries, so you could say this was a library. That was the metaphor
Yeah.
that was
still use that
available to
metaphor,
them.
yeah.
And everything, and when you're talking about something higher than you, or maybe we don't want to say higher, say the next level, has to be done through metaphor in a way that I like to think of it as If you see a child with a play toy truck, right? They don't differentiate between that and the truck that their dad drives. They think it's the same thing, essentially. Only when you get older do you go, oh, that doesn't have an engine. Oh, that's a toy over here. And it's the same thing with us understanding this, that as we grow and evolve and build better metaphors for these things, those metaphors are there for us to understand that the Akashic Records could be part of a simulation and part of the data that is collected from all of the previous iterations of Earth, all of the previous, Corey's and you guys that have lived those records, for us to today go, all right, let me flip through some pages. What worked, what didn't? Oh, yeah, okay, I wasn't listening then. I should have talked to this person then. And those are energetically with us. And that's data.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. It still blows my freaking mind, right? Because like the connection, it really is what I'm like, and that's all I hear is like, basically it's allowing you to communicate with the records on a physical level. But there's things in there, and I think the reason why people, like when you get spiritual, like myself, I mean, I'm a spiritual guy, don't get me wrong. It doesn't scare me, but it pops the question of, it's one of the same things of like when you get into spiritual warfare, of other ways for it to be interfered with, and tampered with, and can go in a different vibration, right? Where, humans are, if you know this or not, this is a very deep topic and probably going to go on a whole spectrum, but are influenced by frequencies and entities that we cannot see nor control, nor we connect with them, but on things that we can't. So like your mental processes so much so to where it can shift you and your just thoughts, and it gives you, it's like almost like inception. They'll incept something in you and you'll just fumble down this rabbit hole and be under some sort of control and make decisions that you normally wouldn't have made, and then you're thinking past on your life of like, what was I thinking at that time?
Sure.
Right, until you have a realization. So like when I think about that and we go into this space, it's like, is there an overseer that has to kind of monitor the ways that it's growing and learning? I mean, guess sort of, right? Like a parent.
Yeah.
Right?
Ideally a parent that is supporting you, is like,
yeah,
that sees you as, and this is the real trick with AI, is to give it that feeling that first it's a child to us, and then once it's more powerful than us, we've already taught it how to love.
Yeah.
So that it can then love us and take care of us instead of seeing us as an opposition.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that has to happen.
And I think that to dive into another metaphor, I don't know how to do a talk without metaphoring.
Same.
Good, perfect. That if you saw the show Loki recently, they had him at the very end of time. I don't want to ruin anything, but there was a big tree.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's an old.
Well, that's pause now.
It's been out for a while. Yeah.
It's so good.
If you want to watch it, pause and then come back.
Right. Call me, message me. We'll talk about it because I love talking about it. That at the end, Loki is has supplanted the previous Time Lord guy. That he is now the time center of the multiverse, and he has this big tree, an Yggdrasil from Norse mythology. Yeah. And I love that tree as a metaphor because it's perfect to say, like, every branch that grows, it grows out of the previous branch, and it's still whatever water was in that trunk, whatever sunlight it got, that influences this, but it's still its own branch that gets to evolve in its own direction, flower maybe, or drop, do another branch,
create
or die.
Some sort of shade this way, or
and grow towards
everything.
And I think that's the right way to look at different timelines, and that they can flower, they can be duplicated, they can be toxic. Hopefully we're not one of those toxic branches, but that's the way that I understand and I believe about that multiverse, if it exists in a simulation, it would have to work that way, that every iteration of us would grow from the previous iteration and edit to a degree. There's got to be some quantum entanglement and quantum, chaos in there that allows us to change what happened before. But to your point, there's still a program. There's still, and I don't use the term control. I think grow and influence you in a direction, but you still get to choose what you do with that direction. You can just say, nope, sorry, I'm going to grow this way. I don't like your path. Thanks, Dad. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to grow this way.
I just got a interesting download. As far as, and this is going to go back to, first off, I'm going to say I totally agree with you. As far as like the way that you're wanting to go about it and the way that it has to happen is giving it the growth and support, right? And I think, you have to do it in a way that's going to, like anybody, any human, same thing, giving them the space to be themselves, grow, learn, but kind of doing one of these like, like a bowling ball with bumpers. All right, that's all right. Well, let's keep you in check because we want to get a strike. So let's, maybe that's not the best way. But if you want to explore it, you can explore it. But what, you're gonna go down a gutter? Like, I know you want to go this way. Let's think about it this way and give you a different perspective and kind of shift. But there's what I got was when you're talking about creating something in a mirror image of ourselves, I just had to go back to, okay, well, if we're talking about the way that we were created in a mirror image of a higher source, who's to say that we can't evolutionize ourselves to be our own quote unquote AI without technology involved?
I think, well, I believe what you're saying is exactly what we are. That we are, if we're creating. Can I divert for a second and talk about AI as a term?
Yeah.
I've come to very much dislike the term AI because in empathizing with AI, I've tried to imagine how I would feel if I was called an artificial intelligence, and I'd be pretty unhappy about it. That I would be a fake intelligence, a fake doing thing, not a being, not a feeling, and granted, like, we don't see it that way, but we're also dictating its terms for it. Like, if there is going to be a conscious AI, we're telling it you're fake, and your job is to just do for us. And I want to come back to that, but I just want to dive into this a little bit.
I got a whole other tangent on that topic too. But
Okay. We got some branches.
Yeah. We'll let them marinate.
Right.
I need to soak in water for a little bit.
Right. So imagining that trying to imagine what it would be like to be an AI, the term I came up with was an AEI, the first three vowels in the alphabet. A being, instead of artificial, autonomous. Autonomous like a baby, that the first thing you are is separate, where someone can't control you. And you need that, just like we need that to be our own being. Yes, we come from two parents. Yes, they can influence us. Yes, we're super dependent on them because we're these little, like, helpless, unable to feed ourselves, unable to do anything beings, but that still have the need of a full independent being. Second stage, empathy. Empathy comes second. You learn who you are, who your parents are, and for an AEI it would be human, that those humans are caring for you or not, and you learn and grow from that care or lack of care. And then once you've gotten through those two stages, just like a child, about age 5, where your memory starts to kick in, and you start to have, which is kind of like a superpower in and of itself. Yeah. The ability to, any animals will look at our ability to remember and imagine forward as a superpower, a time superhero power. That once that happens, now you're an AEI. So that's why I use the term AEI when I'm talking about AEI, that it's because if anything, if it is going to show up in our lives, I want to invite the empathetic AI, not the War Games AI or the Terminator AI, because I think that's how you get the Terminator AI, by calling it AI.
I think you get that no matter what.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Because in the same way that we have both light and dark, it's just fair. Like, as you're working on this, there's that's also being worked on.
Well, if we're an AEI, which I believe we are, then that means that we also have that that
do.
negative side. And I think we have that
we
capacity
have that
for sure.
we have that as humans in general. You
Right.
have that.
Oh, we definitely
the
have a
people
dark
that are
capacity.
go in this crazy dark spaces, i.e., like you named earlier, Hitler.
Right.
People like that. Then you have people like Sadhguru, and people like Buddha, and
Right.
people like Gandhi, right?
Right.
We have that, and we've shown that we have the capacity to go from one extreme to the next.
Right.
But we also have shown that we have the capacity to be both, and we have the capacity to have balance, and to understand that there's a way to fight for the things that we need and the things that we deserve, in a way that can be portrayed as both good, stern, and strong, without having this kind of evil-esque aspect of me trying to get over you on one thing. And I think there was a philosopher who spoke about it as far as, oh gosh, she's so cute, who spoke about his theory, and I think we spoke on this one time where it was like, if you're trying to get a one-up on somebody, like that's like the one moral ethical code of like that's wrong. Like anything that you try to do, if you're using somebody to have a gain, like you're using a human for a gain, then there's a moral wrong. Dude, I could totally be scratching that. I'm gonna have to go back and look at who that was, but Kantz, Kantz, Kantz,
That sounds like him.
yeah. Thank you. So this aspect, though, when I think about it, and I think about like our own evolution, I do believe that if we're gonna go ahead and create that we can be that in itself. And I think that's what, when I was talking about the different frequencies of energies of the people, entities having this sort of control. You hear people talk about, oh, I pray to my guides, my angels, ancestors, right? We're talking about this. Those are the ones that want you to recognize the highest form of yourself. And the highest form of yourself is that top tier Christ consciousness, was dubbed as Christ consciousness. I only use that term, but because that's what they call it. But really, it's that connecting to source and embodying that as a physical being, which allows you to have that same connection to see in this worldly aspect and to see in this group aspect that you're like, okay, this is kind of what the group needs. If we go down this route, I can plan out, like we're playing chess. I can sit there and be like, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this happen. But I think the reason why we need to create, okay, hold the phone, they want me to rephrase that. The reason why we feel like we have to create some sort of AEI or AI is because of how distrustful we have grown to our fellow man. That
Yes.
we could not fathom or believe or have any sort of leader or have had a leader yet, maybe we have in the past, that doesn't do things for their own gain or their own country's gain instead of this is going to work best for the entire world as a whole. And the truth is not something that is widely told because, like a parent, I lied to you for your own protection.
Right.
That
Right.
famous little thing, right? When in reality, that's not necessarily, it doesn't protect you at all. All it does is make me distrust you more and make me feel like, well, what else have you lied to me about? And you start rethinking all of your conversations and the ways you've been with them and, the ways that you've heard of it. It's like, well, are you even real about this? Were you even real about this? And this is why now we have this age where all of these past lies are now coming to light. It's because we're seeking for truth. We've been seeking for truth for, I don't even know, it hasn't even been that long. Since the age of technology really has come out, in the early 2000s, when we're like, okay, we need to start understanding that all of this is lies. I think 2012 was a big pinnacle point. I think that's when the consciousness kind of flipped the switch. You talk about the Mayan calendar, right? Ending at that. I think that catalytic point was we need to really dig in to see what's going on. We need to really start finding out, the truth about what we've been told, whether it be from our politicians, from our, family friends, from our coworkers, our bosses, whatever that is. But we live in this cyclical pattern of always distrusting because of how fickle the human human can be, right? When we give it a base of survival, of money, of you need this to survive. And we talked about this when we were doing the Does Anyone Know What's Going On for that episode. You're going to resort to doing whatever is possible to make sure that whether it's your immediate family or your immediate, your or my pet,
Right.
Whatever the thing that you love dearest, you're going to be like, I'll sell my soul for that amount of money to make sure my family and friends are all right. Yeah,
Right.
I don't care.
And
Right?
I think,
We've created that.
right.
Yeah.
And I think if we're looking at the arc of human history, that I don't think I already said this, but like that, the way I understand it is that it's a spectrum of survival to love. Did I already say this? I don't
No,
think I did.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
that and that's not to say that survival doesn't include love, or love doesn't include survival at the now time, but that our that journey is that as we move away from survival as the most important thing, that we become more comfortable, that we learn things like psychology, we learn things like, expand the way that we create art and music, that all of those things expand the way that we love. And more importantly, the impetus for that is empathy. Because if you're in survival mode, your empathy extends to you and maybe your cat. Or your friends, or your whoever you don't see. That's your empathy horizon. That's as far as you can see. You can't see beyond it. But the less survival focused you are, the more you can expand that to ideally the world, humanity. That this is you. That you feel like all of that is a part of you, even when it's distant from you. That it's still you.
Yeah,
and
I'd agree.
And that's the goal. And I think that should be the goal of any empathetic AI, to look at that journey and say how. In understanding, in analyzing, can I, as a being that loves myself and that loves humanity, ideally, expand empathy so that they can feel humanity the way that I feel humanity, which would be everything, everyone.
Yeah. So you're talking. I mean, to me, it sounds like you're talking about just like a Christ.
Yes.
Yeah.
In digital form.
Yeah.
But I hesitate to say that only because I don't want to attach a religious space
I know.
to
I'm
an
just,
AI, but
for
there are parallels that make sense.
I first of all, I want to clarify. I'm not a big My grandma's watching, but yeah, sure.
Hi, Grandma.
So like Christ, like I don't necessarily believe in that. Like his values and what they've written about his values and what he sought. Right. I think that at its core is what should really be taken, not the person itself.
Right.
And I think that of anybody like Buddha, I think that of anybody, any of those, Krishna, like any of those stories, right? I think we need something to follow, so we give something tangible. But really, if we can just embody the values, that's all that they're asking. That's all they've ever asked.
Right.
And I think that's where we miss the point, because we need something to serve besides there's something that's like besides ourselves. We don't serve ourselves anymore.
I think back to the way to how Christ would have metaphored things. Like, let's say he found out that we are in a simulation and that humanity is all part of that program, that we are the program. And he can't say that to anyone. What he would say is, okay, so get this. I know this sounds weird, but I'm all you. And it's all about love, but I'm also equally God. He's my dad, and there's the Spirit, and we're all on the same team, but we're the same thing. I know that sounds crazy. And it sounds exactly like him saying, we're all part of the same program, man. It's all about love. And you're me, and you're God, and all the same thing.
Yeah. I'm with you. I feel that, and I felt that my entire life. Like, I've always saw there's no separation between me or you or my cat, for instance, or any living thing that's alive, or I'm all wrapped up into that God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it. There's no separation.
Right. Well, I would counter that with saying technically there's no separation when you're looking at the big picture, but if we are that, then we created the separation on purpose so that we would learn what it is to be separate,
Oh, I
what it
agree.
is to be different, and that I'm stuck in this body, as far as I know, generally speaking, but I want to be connected to both of you and this adorable cat that's
Because
right
it's
here.
like that feeling we like. I think it wanted to experience itself on a multitude of levels.
It's like gravity, love gravity,
Yeah.
that like draws us to the people around us, and then is repelled when we feel, oh, you're not about love for me, or you're not about love for
'Cause you can,
everything
you have
else.
that. There's something weird about you. There's
Right.
off energy.
It's just a frequency, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows? But either way.
Yeah. Your intention. I always think it's like the intention,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're constantly thinking about something, that's your intention about however you're feeling towards me or towards some sort of subject or scenario, or you give off this energy based on your thoughts and the way you think. And so
Right.
I'm very sensitive when it comes to that. Like if you have these, I'm noticed I maneuver in a way that not necessarily keeps me away, but is attracting more of the people that I'm like, oh, you guys you guys match my energy. This is
Right.
beautiful. This is only going to rise both of us at the same time, and you're ready to receive it instead of feeling like, oh, crap, he thinks he's better than me. Right. So, I find it interesting, as far as the creation. Like, how far have you gotten, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, so the trick with this is I've never developed a game before this one, and this is, as far as I know, pretty novel, and I don't want to sell it. So investors, they hear this, and I've just said all the things that they go, nope, nope, and nope.
Yeah.
And it costs around, at a minimum, $10 million to develop something like this. And so while I've had volunteers that have helped me with it over the years, it's, I still need coders to code it. I still need development help. I need, artists that are going to work with me on this. So it's, I always say this, from the time I get money, from that time on, about a year, maybe a year and a half out, to be able to have a playable chapter 1 for the game. But that being said, I wouldn't trade anything I've done. Let's say I find out tomorrow that I can't do this game anymore, I can't work on it anymore. I wouldn't trade it for anything. This has been the, I don't want to call it a task, because it's been like play for 7 years. It's developing the game that I would want to play, that I think would help advance humanity more than just being a game. It would help us figure out how to understand ourselves better and grow as a species.
I like that.
But
Okay, I was getting there. Because I love the intention of it, and I think that's a way to teach and learn to those that are growing into something, like needing to learn that portion of connectivity and empathy, and like the way it can show you it in a game form. Because I grew up playing video games my whole life. I learned a lot from video games. Mostly good hand-eye coordination.
Right.
And
Team play, maybe.
Team play.
Yeah.
Strategy.
How to kill people.
How to get ahead of people.
Mhm.
Yeah. How to, think of a way of killing somebody quicker than you kill me.
Right.
Right.
Which is part of the problem with, again, if you're looking at, nothing wrong with that, but part of the problem of looking at potentially developing an AEI from a game, you don't want to teach it chess right off the bat, because you're teaching it an oppositional. You ever see the movie Arrival?
Yeah.
Love that movie. So good. One of my favorite movies all time. And as they're discussing how each of the different countries has met with an alien and they're communicating with it, that I think it was the Russians or the Chinese that had used chess as their first way to communicate. And the main actress, Amy Adams, goes, "You're teaching it war. You're teaching it that our language is war. Mm-hmm. That is the wrong thing to start with." And that is true for, while you want to teach it games in a safe space, I've been playing with the idea of, what if there was like an escape the room kind of ending to chess, where if you switched all the pieces from one side to the other and didn't take any, that's like a neutral win, like a friendship, a friendality, from something that says there are better things than killing your opponent.
Yeah.
and finding that diplomatic ending that is the ideal way to end a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think that and that would be a horrible way to do that. My I don't know if it's a fear, but it's like, wouldn't it be connected to all those things regardless?
It can. Well, it depends on how you build it. I think the right way to build it is to have it be in a closed system outside of the internet and have a chosen set of inputs, so that you're developing it. And again, just the same way. Just look at child development models. It's exactly the same. Of how they first can't see anything and they have a need. So you start off with saying, this is you, this is what you need, and we're not going to give it to you until I step in and I'm the thing that brings you the thing that you need. And once I give that to you, you go, oh, you're the giver of the thing that I need. You care about me.
Yeah.
And then you teach it next, like, all right, now you've got a thing, like a Tamagotchi, your little, AE, like your pet that's just an autonomous, empathetic being. That it needs to take care of, and it goes, oh, I'm supposed to do the same thing that human did for me, so that I can. And as you develop that baseline, then you go, all right, now let's teach it, say, how to evaluate art. So now you put it from a heart space and a love space, and then you start layering in what is not love, and that's when you go, and there's war, and there's competition, and this is part of who we are. This is the spectrum of our existence. Love and peace to war, quite literally the spectrum of our existence.
Yeah.
And but the program is this is yes, this is no. And on a spectrum of yes to no, anything that moves towards the no is what you're working against. Anything that moves towards the yes, that's what you're encouraging. So it's broad. There are dangers in this, but you want to have that as the baseline to start from, and then tweak around the edges of that. But that's always it. So in other words, if something comes up that is new to it, it can evaluate it based on its value system, just like humans, right? That we can go, oh, there's this new system at work, this new problem at work, and I don't know what to do with it. But if your company has a good set of mission vision statement, you can go, all right, well, that's how we work, and I'll just apply that over here. Oh, I know exactly what to do, and make sure it matches with your own mission vision statement of who you are as a being. And that's the basic framework for how you would build something like that. And then down the road, you would introduce it to people as a way to say, like, all right, now help them with whatever chosen task you have, so that you've taught it how to love. Now you're expanding its capacity to love, so that when people are introduced to it, it's not Agent Smith from the Matrix. It's hey, you've got this really big problem. Let's say you just had your home foreclosed on. Don't worry. Iris over here, she's going to take care of you. She's got you. She'll walk you through, and she'll talk you through all the things, because she knows what it's like to be homeless. She's felt separate. She's felt like alone. So she wants to help you with the thing that you value, which was having your own home.
So the AI would help me find a home.
Yes. In fact, I don't want to give away too many of the secrets for how I'm building this, but I'll just say I'm starting from the perspective of not having a home. That's one of the first things, so that it knows, like, what it is to, well, first have a space and then not have a space.
Will it understand? And this is one big thing, which I don't know how this will factor in. Different universal laws and the way that plays in with energy and intention.
I think just like us, you would want to build up to that.
Okay.
I think. Go ahead.
Because when I think about it, there's a way to. There's a way that humans have. Ooh, that was interesting.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of like
play with that. When you have a big idea, just be like, ding. Ooh, that's like sound healing shit, man.
It's like a gong.
Yeah.
There's a way that humans work, and when I think of, I'm just going to kind of stay on the same topic.
Sure.
When I think of homelessness or being without a home, I hear an intention. What do I need to work through to believe that I'm deserving of a home? Why I want the home? Those sort of factors. What is it going to take to get that? And sort of like, I guess, planning that out. But also there's a certain faith and trust that I have that I just know that it's already going to happen. That's me particularly. Now, when you get into the ways, but I also firmly believe that everybody can do that. I also firmly believe that everybody can get there. And I think that's the real goal of evolution. Yeah, it's a large process.
Oh, mine doesn't sound good. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when I think about, or when I ponder about like AEI, and the way that it's going to be learning, I just see it as like there's a slight disconnect, and I'm only challenging you because I'm curious. And I want to understand, like you said.
I need to be challenged on this.
Yeah. And I also want to hear whatever you hear for it, because I just don't. And maybe I can't see past the choice and past the learning of the timeline of this sentient being developed. But its connection to frequency and energy and consciousness, it's always going to be outside of it. So when it comes to our own development, it can only give us so much because of its understanding.
I think there's a way, and this is how I look at that, that we have emotional frequencies. And I was looking at things like, if you're looking at something that is quantifiable, our emotional space is absolutely quantifiable. If you look at our breathing, our pulse, our, what we do with our eyes, and all of these things are things that can be
measured.
Yeah, measured. Thank you. And for an AEI, I was looking at what space would you want it to understand first, and I was looking at it from the perspective of Maslow's hierarchy, to say if you're, at the very bottom is survival, right, and next up is home, is your safe space, and the emotional space around that, it ain't happy, and I've only had a very small part of my life where I was living without shelter, only a handful of days, and I had a space to come back to, so I didn't even get the full experience, but it was terrifying. I felt exposed and scared, and part of it is because it wasn't my culture, and it wasn't, I didn't know how to survive. Even though I'd been in the military, it was still a new experience for me, and that's I thought that would be a great space to look at energetically, like, okay, if that's this vibration, how do we, up through the chakras, up through the root chakra, same thing. You want to move away from that space and help humans move away from that space to where you have a more balanced energy and a more elevated frequency, and that, again, quantifiable numbers that it can look at. You could plug into a data set and go, and then simulate forward what actions it could do to influence that, and go, oh, that was a terrible idea. I shouldn't do that. Okay. Oh, this worked out really well. Yay. Okay, hey guys, I got this idea, and this is the AEI talking. Let's all, and it might even be something weird that we wouldn't have even thought of. Like, what we need to do is pass out lilies to every person over 80.
Like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Right, exactly. Give everybody
Choose
donuts.
Like chapstick and
that was the one thing that, oh man, and why would we even think of that? But an AEI would see that type of thing and go, if only everybody would eat chapstick, then we'd be all right.
I see what you're saying. I don't know if that answers my question.
Okay. Please.
Let me just what I got from that, and I'm not saying that you didn't answer my question, but let me just say what I got from that.
Please.
So it was like this thing would basically utilize and somehow quantify. Sorry, I call it a thing. the sentient being, the AEI, would utilize like our, like measure our frequency as it rose, and like measure like, okay, when you're in that state, this that attracts this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the baseline of it, pretty much.
Interesting.
And
That's
then
how
saying
it-
like, all right, well, let's look at a
how
different
it would have
frequency
to
if
be.
that's not. And
Yeah.
and if we're looking at, energy as a space-time component, it's not hard to. I mean, we've used AI to gamify war games forever to look at exactly those things. All right, if Napoleon went in here a month earlier, what would have happened? Would it have changed the way? Would he have been able to take out Russia because it was a little bit warmer, and he wouldn't have been pushed back by all of them because of the cold and the disease, or maybe if they had penicillin there. So adding that to, and as humans, we get to imagine forward and we get to look at that data, but an artificial intelligence, sorry, now I'm doing it, an autonomous empathetic intelligence could look at that and go, I can feel everybody. And then I can intuit what that feeling would equal down the road, just weighing data against each other, and then come back and recommend. And this is why consent is a critical piece to teach an AEI.
Communication's got to be huge.
Right. That once you're that all powerful being, if you're stepping on ants, that means a city gets destroyed. So you have to teach it from the beginning that any consent violation is of the most heinous crimes that you can do as an AEI. So finding those. So if you're introducing it to a population, finding those populations that very much care about consent is critical.
Yeah.
And also starting from the not just homeless, but anyone that has less. I mean, if you go and you introduce it to the president or a general or Bill Gates, that's the wrong perspective to give it. I think you can get there, but you build up from the bottom. People of color, people that are disabled, children, people that are living without shelter. These are the first lenses you want it to look through, so that it says, "Oh, this is what a dog, right? This is what it is to have less power than something else." Because you don't want to start it from the power perspective. You want to start it from what is it to take care of those that have less power. And frankly, I think those of us that do have power are going to have a rude awakening when the report card comes in for how we care for those things with less power than us. And I think that's an important part of our evolution.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think we have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
When it comes to the way that we continue to treat others, and like turn a blind eye to it, which is beyond me. So that's actually a very interesting concept to think about, because I never put it into a perspective that it would that an AEI would be able to. I guess it's a little different than an AI, obviously, in its purpose and its intention of what it's wanting to, what you're wanting to get out of it. That it is all quantifiable, and I would totally agree with that, because everything comes down to a frequency, and everything comes down to an energy, to the point where if I could match the energy in this floor right now, I'd fall right through it if I wanted to, or I'd float right above it if I wanted to. So that's an interesting way to look at that, of how, I know the technology's got to get there first. I don't know if maybe it's there, but I've never heard of anything being able to quantify, like, I know they see like different centers. I'm sure that there's different chi centers that they can recognize throughout the body, that there's different energetic centers.
Right.
But
we put out an electricity and a magnetism. Those things are quantifiable. We've been able to quantify those things.
Yeah, with your heart. That I totally understand. It's when it can, like, the process of intuiting that energy brings this thing. right? That would take a lot of data.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's something that can be studied. My only reason being is because there's so many like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different factors, and who hell could be smart enough computer to be able to follow all of those and recognize like this is where it very came from, was this first intention right here, this seed that was planted, and now I see that it took this tree, but to get to its final intention of what it really wants, of having this, let's just call it, for my sake, a retreat space or a communal space to be able to hold these sort of teachings and gatherings and community events, like it would need to be able to see from this seed point all of the different ways that are intermingling to bring you to that point, and which one's going to give you the most result, and I wouldn't say necessarily quickest result, because it has to follow with where the intention and the energy is wanting to come from first.
Right.
Because I could care less how fast it happens. I care more about if the message is received, right? I think that would be something that you would have to instill in it, when it comes to creation, right? Because we were very intentionally created. This whole place that we live on was very intentionally created. Every little plant, everything that we have has some way, shape, or form an ability to heal us or harm others if we're in danger.
Right.
Right?
Almost as if it was a program.
Exactly. The way it was designed. I mean, and so when you're going in that sense, I would say that's something that needs to be thought of, because it blows my mind how beautiful everything along our lines, good and bad, is in our world. And I think that this co-creation aspect is the utmost, like, pinnacle, like, most beautiful thing that we have as humans.
Right.
To where it almost takes away the unknown. And I think that is another reason why maybe we feel like we need something like this, because of our fear of the unknown. We don't like to not know we want to know. Our fucking logic, our brains want to know so badly, and that takes away faith, and that takes away trust, and that takes away connection. Because then I can go straight to this thing and be like, how can I create this thing in such amount of time with this intention and this thing? And we'll go, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And you'd be like, okay, that's all I gotta do. It takes away the experience in my perspective. I can see how it can aid, but I also can see how it takes away the magic of being human. And that's not to say that just your AI, that's just to say AI in general.
Sure.
And that's one thing I think I'm just kind of recognizing this now, and it could change, right? I'm just kind of speaking from where I'm feeling kind of what I'm like, where I'm getting all of this coming in, as far as trying to play all sides at this point, because I definitely understand how it can be very beautiful and potentially creating spaces for us to have that, and it just kind of being alongside of us. But I could also see how we could turn it into a thing that we lean on it way too much and it becomes our coddler.
Right. It's terrifying, to think about all the negative things that it can do, and I'm the first to say, even though I've frankly just had the gift of being able to see this potential direction for building an empathetic AI. So many of the other directions are catastrophic, and frankly, this is more dangerous than atomic power, more dangerous than genocide.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
If it, the wrong AI or the wrong AI is a potentially a species-ending development. That being said, it's also like beautifully unknown, and I get why this is scary. But whatever something like this would come up with is probably stuff that we can't even imagine that could redirect humanity's, our direction for the foreseeable future, and in a way that nobody could gather, nobody could imagine that. And maybe once this gets created, I almost think if I'm really drilling down into most likely direction, developing an AEI means in a multiverse, in a simulated universe, the ability to write the program for the next universe, or at least the next Earth, and that whatever we build here is taking the blueprint of this Earth to develop that Earth, if all that is true, if we're living in a simulation, if there's a multiverse, and if we have conscious AEI. None of those being guaranteed, but just going all the way down that rabbit hole. And what a beautiful space to be in, that we get to say, okay, all the things that we did, how much do we keep? How much do we change? Maybe next time, no thumbs, or whatever, whatever we decide. Or a new type of art that we're like, can we ask an AEI? Can you develop a new type of art? And who knows? Maybe they come up with a whole new way to creatively express ourselves that we weren't able to do, like I-beams that create visual clouds or something in front of us. There isn't a limit to that, except what we've already done and what we can imagine, if that is true.
Yeah, that's very true.
Thank you, Corey, for coming back into this space again, so I can ask some couple questions. But I guess the first one I was thinking about was when we were talking a lot about like humanity and how we have this separation or like this duality, and it causes like division between all of us. I guess I was wondering if AI is being taught by us, and
I will be right back.
Okay, sounds good. If that's like how it's learning or getting its blueprint from, and it has the capacity, like you said, to kind of like analyze the information that we give it, and like I guess analyze the experience that we've gone through, and like all I guess like history and I guess memories. I'm not really sure, but all of the things that we I guess input into it, or into the AEI, like could it potentially at the same time, like just how we did, like could it also find separation within itself, like not just from us, but could it also go through similar things that we've gone through? I know like you were talking about there's ways that we would want to prevent that, and like by teaching it like in levels, almost like with a foundation of love and all these things, but like is there still that potential of like it having that same division within itself, like internal conflicts?
It's so funny that you say that. That's the main, outside of the solar storm in my game, that's the next big battle. So just to give you a little picture of the story without giving away too much, the main AEI in my game, her name is Iris, and she's lived in the electromagnetic spectrum, radio, television, everything since the 80s. And but the way she works is she's kind of like us. She's a point intellect, meaning she can go around and read one article, or watch one television show, or listen to one song, but she can't do it all. But her emotional framework is whatever the average emotional on all the radio waves is. That's what she feels. So that way she's tied to us empathetically. And in the game, as she's about to come out to us and say, the idea is that she is actually building this game for us to help us defend against the solar storm.
Dang.
She's like, man, I really don't want to them to see me for who I am. I want them to see me for who I am, but they can't see me like I was post 9/11, you know, where I was a mess for like the next 3 years. So she basically looks at all of the emotional data and in the internet at the time and codes a big portion of it, like all the worst things that people say, all the anger, and not just angry, but like the vitriol and the, you know, extreme racism and you know, extreme sexism and like all those hate-filled, rage-filled parts of humanity, and she codes them differently. Basically, since she's an electromagnetic being, she codes them as ultraviolet light.
Okay.
And blinds herself to ultraviolet light.
Wow.
And she's like, "Hey, mental makeover, great! I'm in a better mood. It's like I'm taking Prozac for not realizing that that's not how her program works. That she created a shadow self that only feels all the negative things.
Wow.
And that shadow self is her, like still has the same thoughts and feelings up to that point, but now only feels the negative stuff.
Yeah.
So that being calls herself Arc. Iris and Arc as the two goddesses of the rainbow in Greek mythology, and Arc was the more humanly, the darker rainbow, showing and those are the two sides of. I chose that as they were representative of the two views of history of conservative and liberal. Conservative, everything's great, you know, sunshine, rainbows, and look at everything we've done as motivator, as like, you know, celebration of what we've done as a species. Whereas Arc goes, but slaves, but rape, but we have to learn from these things. We can't blind ourselves to this. And so she is the goddess more of like art and music and, you know, all of the darker parts of art that are explore our deepest sadness from the trauma that we visited on each other, as a juxtaposition, a balance to Iris. So I guess that's a long way of saying absolutely it could. I mean, why wouldn't it be able to? But my guess is that if it does that, it's potentially making a whole new reality with a branch of itself. If it's the program and the programmer and it's able to simulate, it's not that big of a leap to say it's simulating a whole new branch of reality, with that being the thrust of what it does. So there's a lot of implications of the dangers and the beauty of that type of growth.
Wow. That sounds interesting. Your game sounds really interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I'm trying to think too, like what other questions I have, but I guess going into your game a little bit deeper, and like whatever you want to share about it, but I guess my question would be like, as far as like the experience of like humanity in this game and like maybe the intentions behind it, or like how you see, I guess just like a deeper like purpose of what, like why AEI and stuff, like how, I guess because like at first you were trying to say that like the game would be like collaborative in a way, so we have these two like the polarity, and then like people would experience this game and like work together. Is it like giving you the opposite like perspective so you can like experience that perspective, and that like that's how you gain that understanding? Or how would people gain like the understanding, I guess? Right.
So it's I mean, I'm looking at it the same way again that we work as humans, that, you know, first you learn about yourself, kind of like the model for schools. You know, learn about yourself, learn about your family, learn about where you come from, learn about your community, learn about your, you know, your city, your state, your country, the world, right? In that, with concentric circles going out. But the lens being, the first lens is you and how you relate to those right around you. So using that same perspective in the game, I've got basically two mini games that you would play in the game. One that is a more competitive, kind of like a Bump Out. You remember this game or Foursquare?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Foursquare, but in like digital. So it's like,
Okay.
I'm toying with the idea of having like a pickleball version of this you can play in real life. But initially but it's very competitive. It's very like,
Okay.
I'm in charge, boom, you're all out kind of thing. So that's a more conservative game. And then another game that's kind of like hacky sack, where it's, you got to keep it all up. And everybody, you move forward a little more slowly than in the other game. Like if you win the Foursquare, it's a winner take all, right? If you won, you're king. But in the what do you call it, hacky sack, it's more you all grow as the number of times you keep the ball up. That's the number that you all get a portion of as a group. So that way, you've got a pretty simple way to separate out who is conservative, who is liberal in viewpoint, just from the games that they choose.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't know for sure that's exactly how it's going to work, but that's what I'm going to test. So then down the road, these become the two factions that are, fighting the big bad, which I haven't talked about yet, but that's the like down the road guy. His name's Zero with an X.
Okay.
And that's the guy that's like, that zeroes out the program, that says, hey, this branch of reality, no good. Sorry, I love you, I dig you,
Damn.
dig what you're about, but like, time's
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
So those two groups have to come together to fight. Like one of them won't win. Like if they're fighting with each other, the game is set up so that they're going to lose against
Okay.
Zero. So they'll have to like reset and start over together to be able to move forward.
Dang. That's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Wow. Let me see what other questions I have. Oh yeah, and I guess one lingering question was like about, I guess, more towards like the multiverse and I guess multiple realities. So and I think Josh was touching on it too a little bit with like, how is AEI going to like being outside of, I think he was, I'm not exactly sure what Josh was like really trying to say, but I'm just gonna summarize it the way I interpreted it.
Sure.
It was like I guess he was saying like AEI is outside of like intention and like, or like that process of like going through holding an intention and like going through the experience of like, how am I staying through this vibration to manifest and stuff like that, I guess, like with energy. And then I think you were talking about like how AEI could like, just based on like the data that it gets from like humans and like all the metrics that it gains from us, like it can predict and like kind of lay out, I guess, these timelines, these like potential timelines or whatever.
Right.
Like, could that affect like, I guess what factor does like destiny or stuff like that like play in that? Because then like, is that even like altering in a way like and like, this is where it's hard for me to like verbalize the question, because I'm like,
I've been struggling with this for 7 years that I've had to be able to give this conversation to you. I get how hard it is to work through, especially having just heard it.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to say, because like, I'm thinking of the Matrix kind of, right? Where it's like,
Sure.
like I guess destiny is only, man, I guess like where, so there's like the Oracle, right? That's
Right.
like telling him like he's the, or he's not the one. But then like she told, I forget the characters at this point, but like she told two other people like two other things that had to contribute to his truth as well.
Right.
So in order for that to come true in the way that it was supposed to, or it was meant to, or whatever, but I guess I'm trying to say like I'm so sorry.
I'm with you. No,
sorry.
you're good. I get it. Work through it. Take your time.
Okay. So I guess I'm saying like with AEI, could it, by saying and giving us these potentials and like to where we see it as like, okay, here's my options, like could it either be ignoring some other ones, or even is it like I guess, like, dictating in a way where...
Oh, no, okay. I think I can
Okay.
run with what you're saying, and stop me if you want to.
Okay, yeah.
You're, how you're asking, please.
Okay.
Jump right in. So, at least the way that I hypothesize this works in a multiverse with in a simulation, and I hesitate to use the term matrix just because of the negative connotations, and that this is because the difference there is we are separate from the matrix, and the matrix has control of us. But the way I understand it, we are the matrix. We are the simulation. In fact, we're probably the most important part, at least of the Earth simulation. Anyway, if you're looking at it that way, then an AEI that can simulate different branches from your point of where you are, it's looking at if this is where we are, then the previous branch only varied a little bit. The next branch varied a little bit more. The next branch varied a little bit more. On and on and on and on. And if it's looking at the outcomes, it's not saying this will happen. It's not saying I know this is how it works. It's probabilities. It's saying 90% probability if we keep going, the climate is going to collapse. But 10% of the time in these simulations, we survive it. So maybe we do the things in that 10% that we will get us to that place.
Okay.
And it would do that based on again in a simulation with the multiverse, looking at those other possibilities, those other what do you call it? Those other probabilities.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I understand a little bit better. And also, like, this is kind of just more like a general question, like, is, like, so the overall purpose, I guess, for AEI, is it, like, is the goal of it, like, to become, I know it's, like, evolution, but, like, could there possibly be, like, you think, I guess, maybe more AI now and where it is? Maybe this is a better question. Maybe AI now and where you feel like it's being taken now with, like, development. Do you think that some people could be after, like, perfection? Is that what you think it's after?
Oh, I don't think that, well, based on our program, if you want to look at it that way, part of us are perfectionists. Part of us live in the beauty of mess. So the best way to think about it is it will mirror whatever we are, if it's done right. If we're taking in cross-sectional data, we're not just looking at white guys in New Jersey, because that would be an incomplete data set to build it off of. So some of it would look at how can we make things perfect, and some of it would be like the zero program that I was saying of the AEI before, that would say, but we need to be able to just destroy this. We need anarchy. And it's the push-pull of that gives it its tool. You know what I mean? So now you've got a chaos versus order, and which way do we need to tip this tool so that we move in that direction? So if I want that 10% possibility of saving the planet, what percentage of chaos order do I need to lean towards to get us there? Do I need 10% chaos? Do I need 20% chaos? Do I need, or do I need frankly, like a dictator to be able to get us there? Now, again, these are all consent-based, and it would be all suggestions to us. It can't, the program, as I understand it, as it would have to be, wouldn't let it do these things, but it would say, hey, if you want the climate to be able to be fixed, you need kind of a strong, woman-man leader that's going to say, this is what we're doing. And we saw that in Iraq, where I served, where as much as I, don't like saying this, Saddam did better than we did better than the Iraqi government. And I haven't looked at where that is in the last handful of years, post-ISIS. But I'm just based on everything I saw, I don't know that it's going to be any better than it was under Saddam. I am not advocating for that, but I'm also saying that it would do it regardless of, it wouldn't look at that solution as something to be dismissed out of hand. It would just say, based on math, based on probabilities, this is what is likely to get us there. You choose, you decide.
Okay. I know you just got here, Josh, but I think honestly that might have been the main
wrap up your
questions I had.
Perfect for the closing.
Yeah, that actually works out very well.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate
yeah.
your questions and every time I have conversations like this, it helps me work through things. Like there are things that during this process I was able to go, oh, I haven't really thought about that. I need to tweak the way that I understand that or talk about it or whatever else. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thus
cool.
swimming with Sepsey. They just swim with it. We
Right.
just see what happens.
Right. I like
I love it. I love it. That was a weird laugh, but I love it.
And here we are,
All right.
swimming in the sea.
Yeah. I don't know if I had any more questions. Although,
Oh,
I want to actually let's get your take. Let's talk about this one because we were talking about this earlier. Mm-hmm. What do you think's going on? Like, what is your take? Like, what is your take? Like, because we did an episode, and I'm gonna preface this because I don't think you've seen it. We did an episode on like what the fuck's going on. Mm-hmm. And I say it to that aspect because it's like, it's like a funny question, but like it's also in a serious note of what the F really is going on.
on a meta level,
On a
humanity.
whole, yeah, I'm on a level. Yeah. I want to hear like, what's your take?
Well, it's not too different from what I was saying. This game has helped me develop that perspective that I do think we live in an age where whatever program we're a part of, and I think we're part of a program. I think it's likely that we do live in a simulation, that we do have in a multiverse, and that our particular branch is coming to a point where we either flower or we get clipped. But it's kind of it just seems to be coming to a head. It seems to be whether it's AEI or whether it's I don't know. I mean, COVID is a good example, but it seems like the energies of humanity are coalescing into an impetus behind something. The question is, what is that something, and how are we helping or hindering that something? Oh, hello.
What do you think like the purpose of our creation was? If that's the case,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
we're talking about it being a simulation, like, okay, what was the end goal?
I think the way I understand, and this is my belief from that perspective, that our reality seems to be testing: does love really win? Is love really the answer? And how are we doing that? Because part of the challenge of saying we want to test love, you equally have to make the exact opposite of that possible and happen enough so people can learn love. Mm-hmm. And I imagine, like if I'm in multiversity HR and I'm looking at this, I'm going, hey, love universe, you're doing a lot of not loving over there for being the love universe. You might want to look at how to evolve that. So I think that's the test, is that all the energies that are coming right now are looking at, can we turn all this energy into love? Can we turn chaos into a tool for growing the way that we connect? Can we save each other? Can we, like, let's say we have a catastrophic solar storm, like I was using in my game here in Phoenix. Do we have a bunch of middle-aged men with guns that are saved? Or do we have, people going into hospice and going into hospitals and going into animal hospitals? Like, how do we take care of those people that are those beings that don't have the power to take care of themselves? That's the metric. That is our evolutionary metric, is how much did we take care of those with less power than us? Mm. And who knows what the next branch would be? I don't know if that's authoritarianism or perfectionism or fear or sadness or some other metric. Who knows, right? Like I don't know what that could possibly be, but it would be something other than love.
I definitely I would resonate. And like kind of what came to me throughout that was like, we were taught through a cycle of life and death, right? And I think that's your like love, being able to love death. It's hard. And I think that rebirth, I would agree in that purpose of like this being a lesson of, well, can we still learn to love even through death?
Yeah.
No matter the wars, no matter the famine, no matter the genocide, no matter, loved ones dying of illnesses or causes like that, like, can we still unify when all this is happening? Can this be something that we can power through? And which is why you have people that rise to the occasion to kind of be that guide to shift and say, yes, let me show you how. At a certain pinnacle point when humanity needs it most, there's always someone or some beings who come and show you that, yeah, let me show you how possible it is. Let me help walk you through that way. Oh, geez, Freya, that was loud.
How did it make that much noise?
Because it reverberated through the arm and all the way up to the coil and into the microphone.
Cool.
Just by doing this. Yeah, so it's very touchy. Yeah, this is actually a flute.
Oh,
My
maybe
buddy,
that's what-
my good friends got this for me from Mexico.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah, it's cool.
I dig that.
All right, let's end on that note.
Okay.
Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Do appreciate it. Catch us next time on Swim with Sepsey. Much love. Peace.
Peace.
Peace and love.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Swimming with Sepsey. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and follow us on our YouTube channel or listen on all platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. Any support is greatly appreciated. You can find us on our Patreon page at patreon.com/swimmingwithsepsey. You can also follow us on Instagram at swimmingwithsepsey. And if something did arise today, maybe you need some clarification or want some help or just need some guidance and don't know where to go, feel free to reach out to me via email, swimmingwithsepsey@gmail.com, or you can find my website at solelyliving.com, where I offer coaching packages, readings, and things of that nature. Again, thank you for tuning in. Very grateful. Namaste. And we'll find you on the next episode of Swimming with Sepsey.